The afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the streets as the Anderson family's taxi pulled up to the Blue Horizon Hotel. The building stood tall and proud with white stone walls and gleaming glass windows that caught the light in a way that almost made it look like it was smiling down at the guests who entered. It was the kind of hotel that people took pictures of before walking inside. Malik Anderson pressed his face against the taxi window as they stopped at the curb. His eyes grew wide at the sight of the glittering chandeliers he could see through the tall glass doors. He was just 14 and still found wonder in new places. His mother smiled at his excitement while his father paid the driver. The family stepped out of the car together. Mr. Anderson carried the heavier bags, while Mrs. Anderson kept hold of a smaller one filled with snacks and books for the trip. Malik wheeled his own small suitcase, trying to feel grown up. The smell of fresh flowers drifted toward them from a large arrangement in the lobby entrance. The doorman, in a crisp uniform, opened the glass door and greeted them with a polite smile. Malik thought this was a good sign, and his shoulders relaxed. Inside, the air was cool and carried a faint scent of lemon polish. The lobby was even more beautiful than it had appeared from the outside. A long, soft carpet stretched from the entrance to the front desk. Guests walked by, chatting quietly, their luggage wheels making soft clicking sounds against the marble floor. The chandelier Malik had spotted from the taxi hung above the center of the lobby like a glowing crown. The sparkle of crystal and the shine of polished brass made the place feel like something from a movie. The Andersons approached the front desk. Behind it stood a man in his 40s with neatly combed hair and a name tag that read Carlton. He wore a perfect navy suit and a tie so precisely knotted it looked like he had tied it in the mirror more than once. He looked up as they arrived, his expression pleasant but not quite warm. He greeted them with a short nod and asked for their name and reservation details. Mr. Anderson gave him the information with a smile. The family had booked their stay weeks ago, choosing the Blue Horizon because of its good reviews and its promise of comfort. Malik leaned against the counter, still looking around at the tall ceilings and the grand staircase at the far end of the room. Everything about the place seemed like it belonged to a storybook. Carlton typed something into the computer. His fingers moved quickly, but his eyes shifted toward the Andersons in a way that was hard to read. He asked for the confirmation number, and Mr. Anderson provided it. Carlton typed again and then paused. He said that he could not find the booking in the system. Mrs. Anderson frowned slightly and explained that they had received an email confirmation. She reached into her bag and pulled out a printed copy of it. Carlton glanced at the paper, looked back at the screen, and then announced that all the suites were currently full. His voice was polite, but it carried a firmness that left little room for discussion. The family was surprised. They had chosen a suite because they were staying for several days and wanted the extra space. Mr. Anderson asked if there had been a mistake. Carlton replied that there was nothing available and that the hotel was at full capacity for the weekend. Malik noticed the difference in Carlton's manner when another guest walked up to the counter next to them. Carlton's face softened instantly for the new guest, and his tone became lighter, almost cheerful. He welcomed them warmly and began checking them in without hesitation. The Andersons stood quietly, waiting until Carlton finished helping the other person. When he turned back to them, his polite mask was back in place. He suggested that they try another hotel nearby. Mrs. Anderson stayed calm and asked him once more to check the booking. Carlton sighed softly and typed a few more keys before shaking his head again. He repeated that nothing could be done. Mr. Anderson felt a mix of disappointment and confusion. They had planned this trip for months. Malik looked at his parents, sensing the shift in mood. He did not fully understand why they were being turned away when they had proof of their booking. Still, he kept quiet, trusting his parents to handle the situation. Instead of arguing loudly or showing frustration, Mr. Anderson decided to take a different approach. He thanked Carlton for his time, even though the words felt heavy. Then he stepped away from the counter and pulled his phone from his pocket. He walked a few steps toward a quiet corner of the lobby and began dialing a number. Malik stayed with his mother, still watching the golden light from the chandelier scatter across the marble floor. Mrs. Anderson placed a hand on her son's shoulder and smiled gently at him, though there was a shadow of thought in her eyes. She spoke softly about patience and the importance of staying calm even when things did not go as planned. Malik nodded, though part of him still wished they could just go up to their room and start their holiday. Meanwhile, Mr. Anderson's voice was low but steady on the phone. His call was short, just a few words and a promise to wait. He returned to his family with a quiet smile that did not quite match the situation. Malik noticed the hint of confidence in his father's eyes and felt a spark of curiosity. The three of them stood together near the tall glass windows at the side of the lobby. Outside, the late afternoon light was beginning to soften, painting the street in gentle shades of gold and rose. Guests continued to come and go. Suitcases rolling, doors opening and closing, laughter drifting through the air from the cafe on the corner of the lobby. The Andersons waited. Malik sensed that something was about to happen, though he could not guess what it would be. His father's calm, his mother's quiet strength, and the faint hum of conversation around them created a moment that felt like the pause before a curtain rises in a theater. Whatever was about to unfold would change the rest of their stay in ways none of them could have predicted. The soft hum of the lobby air conditioner filled the space, as the Anderson family remained by the tall windows. Malik watched the front desk from the corner of his eye. He noticed Carlton greeting more guests. Every time a new person approached, the clerk's posture straightened and his voice brightened. His words carried a warmth that had been missing when he spoke to the Andersons. Malik could not understand why there was such a difference. A tall man in a light gray suit came to the desk with a single small bag. Carlton's smile widened instantly. He leaned forward slightly, speaking in a friendly tone and welcoming the man to the Blue Horizon Hotel. The man nodded, handed over his card, and within moments, Carlton was sliding across a room key. The guest thanked him and walked toward the elevators. The ease of the exchange made it clear that rooms were still available. Mrs. Anderson had also noticed the difference in behavior. She stood quietly, keeping her thoughts to herself, but her eyes followed every movement at the counter. She had been in customer service for years and knew the signs when someone was not being fully truthful. Mr. Anderson remained calm, his earlier phone call still fresh in his mind. He had learned long ago that patience could be more powerful than anger. A young couple arrived next at the counter. They spoke cheerfully about their weekend plans. Carlton laughed at their jokes, checked them in, and handed them a suite key. Malik saw it clearly, the word "sweet" printed in gold letters on the small folder. He turned to his mother and whispered about it. She simply nodded, her face unreadable, though she gave her son's hand a gentle squeeze. The moments stretched on. The marble floors gleamed under the chandelier's light. Outside, the sound of car tires rolling over the street reached faintly through the glass doors. Guests kept moving in and out, each one receiving the warm welcome the Andersons had expected for themselves. After several more check-ins, Carlton finally glanced toward them. His eyes met Mr. Anderson's for the briefest second before looking away. He spoke across the lobby, saying again that there were no suites and suggesting they try another hotel in the area. His tone was polite enough for anyone passing by, but the lack of real effort was clear to the Andersons. Mr. Anderson walked back to the desk slowly. His steps were steady, his expression neutral. He thanked Carlton again and asked one more time if the booking could be checked with a manager. Carlton hesitated. The pause was short, but it was there. He replied that the manager was busy and would not be available for some time. Mrs. Anderson remained where she was, watching. Her patience was not weakness. She was simply choosing the right moment to speak. Malik shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his suitcase standing beside him like a silent companion. He could feel a quiet tension in the air, though it was not the loud kind. It was the sort that made people lean in, sensing that something was about to change. Carlton began typing again at his computer. His face was calm, but there was a stiffness in his jaw. He repeated that the system showed no booking and no available suites. The words were the same as before, but they now carried a final tone, as if to close the conversation. Mr. Anderson did not argue. Instead, he nodded, thanked him once more, and returned to his wife and son. He spoke softly, telling them that it was best to wait just a little longer. Malik's eyes searched his father's face, trying to read what he was thinking. Mr. Anderson gave a reassuring smile that hinted he had a plan. A few minutes passed. A bellhop walked by, pushing a cart stacked with luggage. He smiled at the family. As he passed, unaware of the exchange that had taken place, the soft sound of piano music floated through the air from the hotel lounge, blending with the quiet conversations of guests nearby. Mrs. Anderson took a slow breath. She was thinking about the many times she had taught Malik that kindness and respect should be shown to everyone, no matter the situation. This moment, she knew, would be one of those silent lessons a child remembers. Carlton kept busy behind the counter. He greeted new arrivals, handed out keys, and gave directions to nearby restaurants. To anyone watching, it looked like a normal afternoon in the hotel. But to the Andersons, the difference in treatment was impossible to ignore. At one point, a woman in a blue dress approached the counter without a reservation. She asked if any suites were available. Carlton's voice softened and he smiled as he typed. After a short moment, he told her there was indeed a suite open for the weekend. He handed her the rate card and she nodded happily before pulling out her wallet. Malik's eyes widened at this. He looked at his father, waiting for him to react. Mr. Anderson simply raised his eyebrows slightly, then glanced toward the entrance of the lobby. Malik followed his gaze but saw nothing unusual. The clock above the reception desk ticked toward the hour. The light in the lobby shifted slightly as clouds passed over the sun outside. The space still felt grand, but for the Andersons, the sparkle of the chandelier had dimmed in meaning. They had come expecting warmth and hospitality, and instead, they were given distance and hesitation. Mr. Anderson placed a hand on his son's shoulder. His touch was gentle but steady, the kind that says without words that everything will be fine. Malik felt his shoulders relax, though his curiosity only grew stronger. His parents were not the kind to give up easily, and he could tell that something was quietly unfolding. Carlton continued working, but from time to time, his gaze flickered toward the family by the windows. It was as if he wondered why they had not yet left for another hotel. He glanced toward the entrance more than once, and each time his posture changed slightly, as though expecting someone important to arrive. Mrs. Anderson looked around the lobby. She noticed small details she had missed earlier. A painting of a coastline hung above the lounge doorway. A vase of fresh lilies stood on a side table near the elevators. A group of business travelers sat in deep chairs by the fireplace, speaking in low voices. All these details seemed calm and ordinary, but she knew the quiet could change in a single moment. That moment was close now. The air seemed to hold a slight charge, the kind that comes before a change in weather. Malik felt it too. His father's calm was not the calm of someone who had accepted defeat. It was the calm of someone waiting for the right timing. And so, they waited. The lobby clock ticked on, its steady rhythm filling the pauses between the soft murmur of guests and the quiet rolling of luggage wheels across the marble floor. The Anderson family stood together near the large windows. They were not hurried. They were not flustered. Instead, they stood with the calm patience of people who understood the value of waiting for the right moment. Malik shifted slightly, his suitcase handle still in his hand. His eyes roamed the lobby again, catching the gleam of brass fixtures, the shimmer of the chandelier, and the slow, steady movements of the staff as they went about their work. He noticed the way the bellhop bowed slightly as he passed guests, the way a housekeeper pushed her cart toward the elevator with careful steps. Everyone seemed busy, yet there was still an air of unhurried elegance in the space. Mrs. Anderson kept her gaze on the front desk. Her eyes were calm but focused, like someone watching a stage performance and waiting for the main scene to begin. She saw Carlton speak to more guests, each time showing the same polite warmth she had not experienced. Herself, she said nothing about it to her son, but she felt the truth of the difference in her heart. Mr. Anderson's phone buzzed quietly in his pocket. He glanced at the screen for a moment, then slipped it away without a word. Malik noticed but chose not to ask. His father's calm expression carried a message without speech. Whatever was happening, it was unfolding exactly as he intended. Carlton's posture remained professional, but there was a slight tension in his shoulders now. He seemed aware that the family had not left. Guests normally moved on quickly when told there were no rooms available. But the Andersons remained, standing with quiet dignity, not raising their voices, not showing anger. This composure made them harder to dismiss. A man in a dark green jacket approached the counter and spoke softly to Carlton. His voice was low enough that the Andersons could not hear the words, but Carlton's quick nod and brief glance toward the family revealed that they were part of the conversation. The man in green left as quickly as he had arrived, heading toward a hallway near the back of the lobby. Mrs. Anderson took a slow breath. She leaned slightly toward Malik and whispered about the importance of staying polite in difficult situations. Malik nodded, still curious about why they were waiting. He thought about how easy it would be to simply walk away and find another hotel, but he trusted his parents' choice to remain. The piano music from the lounge floated gently into the lobby, adding a soft, steady rhythm to the air. A few children ran past toward the elevators, their parents calling after them with cheerful voices. Malik watched them go, wondering what their rooms looked like and how it would feel to be unpacking right now. Carlton greeted another couple at the counter. They spoke about their reservation, and after a short moment, Carlton smiled and told them their suite was ready. He handed them their keys without hesitation. Malik's eyes narrowed slightly. He did not understand why his family was being told there were no suites while others were receiving them. He felt the question rise inside him, but he remembered his mother's words and chose to stay quiet. Mr. Anderson took a few steps forward, returning to the counter. He did not speak loudly or demand anything. He simply asked Carlton if the manager might be available now. Carlton's answer was the same as before, that the manager was busy. This time, Mr. Anderson thanked him and added that they would wait, as long as necessary. The words were simple, but the steadiness of his tone carried weight. Carlton hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding and returning to his work. That hesitation told Mrs. Anderson that her husband's patience was beginning to make an impact. She knew from experience that calm persistence often left a stronger mark than frustration. Malik wandered a few steps toward the center of the lobby, pulling his suitcase beside him. From this angle, he could see the reflection of the chandelier. In the polished floor, the golden light shimmered in the marble, broken only by the soft shadows of passing guests. He felt as if he were in a place that told two stories at once, one of beauty and welcome, and another of quiet barriers invisible to most who entered. Mr. Anderson remained near the counter, not pressing for answers, but making his presence known. Mrs. Anderson joined Malik, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. She told him that sometimes the best way to change a moment was not through force, but through the example you set. Malik listened, still unsure how this would end, but understanding that his parents were teaching him something important in real time. More minutes passed. A staff member brought a tray of refreshments into the lounge, the scent of freshly baked pastries filling the air. The warmth of the smell contrasted with the cool marble under Malik's feet. He looked again toward his father and noticed the small but steady smile still on his face. A couple of guests entered the lobby from outside, pulling wheeled bags behind them. Carlton greeted them warmly, and the sound of his cheerful tone reached the Andersons easily. He checked them in quickly and sent them toward the elevators with a friendly nod. Each such moment added to the quiet puzzle Malik was building in his mind. The man in the green jacket returned to the lobby, this time walking directly toward Carlton. He handed the clerk a small folder. Carlton opened it, scanned the papers, and then glanced toward the Anderson family once more. His expression was still controlled, but there was a flicker of something else in his eyes now. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps caution. Mr. Anderson saw it too. He turned slightly and looked out the tall windows at the street outside. The golden afternoon light had begun to fade into a softer glow as the day moved toward evening. The city beyond the glass carried on as usual, unaware of the quiet story, playing out inside the hotel. Mrs. Anderson adjusted the strap of her bag and gave Malik a reassuring smile. She could feel that the moment they had been waiting for was drawing near. She did not know exactly when it would arrive, but the subtle changes in the air, in the glances, and in the tone of voices told her it would be soon. The Andersons did not move toward the exit. They did not speak loudly or demand attention. They simply stood with dignity, allowing the space to speak for them. Around them, the life of the hotel continued, but the quiet tension between them and the front desk had grown into something that could no longer be ignored. And still, they waited. The lobby of the Blue Horizon Hotel carried on with its gentle rhythm. Guests came and went, luggage rolled over the marble floor, and the chandelier above cast a steady golden glow across the polished surfaces. Yet beneath that calm surface, something subtle had shifted. Mr. Anderson's earlier phone call had not been ordinary. It was clear from the way he stood now, relaxed yet alert, that he was expecting a response. Malik noticed how his father glanced toward the entrance every so often. The boy's curiosity grew stronger with each passing minute, but he remained silent, sensing that speaking too much might disturb whatever his father was waiting for. Carlton continued working at the front desk, his hands moving over the keyboard with practiced ease. He greeted each new guest with the same polished smile, but every few minutes his eyes would drift toward the Anderson family. He seemed to be wondering why they were still there and what they might be waiting for. Mrs. Anderson stood close to Malik. Her calm expression never changed, but her eyes noticed everything. The small changes in Carlton's tone, the faint tension in his movements, and the way the other staff members seemed unaware of the unspoken tension between the clerk and her family. She knew that patience could often create the most surprising outcomes. A family with two small children approached the counter. Carlton leaned forward slightly, smiling warmly as he spoke to them. He typed for a moment and then handed them their keys, wishing them a pleasant stay. Malik's attention was caught by the word "sweet" written on the card folder. The sight of it added another quiet question to the list forming in his mind. Just as Carlton began checking in another guest, the tall glass doors at the front of the hotel opened. A man in a dark tailored suit stepped inside, his pace steady and confident. He carried no luggage, only a slim black folder in one hand. His eyes scanned the lobby for a moment before locking on to the Anderson family. Malik noticed the change in his father first. Mr. Anderson straightened slightly, his calm expression giving way to the faintest hint of a smile. Mrs. Anderson's gaze followed his, and when she saw the suited man approaching, she gave a small nod. The man walked directly toward them, bypassing the reception desk entirely. His polished shoes made soft, deliberate sounds against the marble floor. When he reached the Andersons, he greeted them warmly, shaking Mr. Anderson's hand with the familiarity of someone who knew him well. Carlton looked up from the front desk, his fingers freezing on the keyboard. His eyes narrowed slightly in curiosity as he watched the exchange. The man in the suit then turned toward the counter and asked in a clear, professional tone, "Is there a problem with the Anderson family's reservation?" The question hung in the air for a moment. Carlton blinked, then quickly composed himself. He replied that the system showed no available suites for the dates requested. His tone was respectful, but there was a faint stiffness to it now. The suited man opened the black folder in his hand and glanced at a page. He then looked back at Carlton and said, "That is unusual, considering the Andersons are entitled to any available room in this hotel, including the suites." His voice carried a quiet authority that made nearby guests glance toward the desk. Malik felt his heart beat faster. He could sense that something important was unfolding, though he still did not fully understand the weight of the man's words. His mother's hand rested gently on his shoulder, grounding him in the moment. Carlton's expression shifted slightly. He asked in a careful tone why the Andersons would have such an entitlement. The suited man closed the folder and placed it neatly on the counter before answering. "Because they are the new owners of the Blue Horizon Hotel," he said. His words were calm, but they carried a finality that left no room for doubt. The statement seemed to still the air in the lobby. The soft piano music from the lounge continued, but for those who had overheard, the moment felt like a pause in time. Malik's eyes widened, his mind racing to connect the dots. His father's calm, his mother's steady presence, the phone, call, the waiting. It all made sense now. Carlton blinked twice, his usually smooth composure faltering. He glanced from the suited man to the Andersons, as if confirming whether this was truly the case. Mr. Anderson stepped forward, his voice calm but clear, and confirmed the statement. He explained that the purchase had been finalized recently, and that they had come quietly today to experience the hotel as regular guests before making any formal announcements. Mrs. Anderson added that they valued hospitality deeply and wanted to see the service through the eyes of a visitor. Her words were soft but carried meaning. She did not need to mention what they had experienced so far. The contrast between the welcome given to others and the one given to them spoke for itself. The suited man, who was clearly a senior figure in the hotel's management, turned to Carlton. His tone remained professional as he asked that the Andersons be given the best available suite immediately. He also requested that their luggage be taken upstairs without delay. Carlton's face tightened for just a moment before he nodded and began typing quickly. His voice, when he spoke again, carried a politeness that felt sharper now, as if it had been carefully polished in an instant. He confirmed that a suite was indeed available and that it would be ready within minutes. The bellhop who had passed earlier reappeared, taking the Andersons' bags with a friendly smile. Malik followed his parents toward the seating area near the elevators, his mind buzzing with questions. He wanted to ask how long they had owned the hotel and why they had not told him before, but he held his words, knowing that there would be time later. As they waited for the suite to be prepared, a few guests glanced toward them, curiosity flickering in their expressions. The Andersons did not seek attention. They simply sat together, speaking quietly among themselves, their calm presence unchanged despite the shift in circumstances. When the bellhop returned and announced that the suite was ready, Mr. Anderson thanked him warmly. The suited man shook hands with the family once more before heading toward the manager's office. Carlton remained at the desk, his eyes following them as they walked toward the elevator. The moment the elevator doors closed, Malik looked at his parents with wide eyes. His father smiled gently and told him that sometimes the best way to learn about people was to see how they treated you when they thought you had nothing to give them. His mother nodded in agreement, her eyes full of quiet wisdom. And with that, the elevator rose toward their suite, carrying with it the beginning of a very different chapter for the Blue Horizon Hotel. The elevator doors opened to the top floor of the Blue Horizon Hotel. A wide hallway stretched ahead, lined with soft carpet in shades of cream and gold. The air was faintly scented with lavender, and the lighting was warm, giving the space a quiet sense of luxury. Malik followed his parents, his suitcase rolling softly over the carpet, his eyes taking in every detail. He had never been on the top floor of a hotel before, and the stillness of the hallway felt different from the busy movement of the lobby below. The bellhop led the way to a large double door at the end of the hall. He pulled out a card key and opened it with a smooth motion. As the doors swung inward, Malik's eyes widened. The suite was more like a small apartment than a hotel room. The living area had a deep blue sofa, a glass coffee table, and tall windows that let in the afternoon light. Beyond the living room, Malik could see a dining table with fresh flowers in the center and a kitchen area stocked with refreshments. Mrs. Anderson stepped inside and looked around slowly. She had stayed in hotels before, but this space felt different. Not because it was bigger or more expensive, but because of what it represented now. This was part of what they owned. She smiled to herself, thinking about how the next time she entered this suite, she would be the one making sure it was ready for guests. Mr. Anderson thanked the bellhop, handed him a tip, and assured him they would call if they needed anything else. Once the door closed, Malik could no longer hold back his questions. He turned to his father and asked how long they had owned the hotel and why they had not told him before. Mr. Anderson walked toward the window, looking out at the city skyline before answering. He explained that the deal had been completed only a short time ago and that they had wanted to keep it private until they were ready to make the news public. He told Malik that they had come today as regular guests to see the hotel from the perspective of visitors. That way, they could understand exactly what needed to be improved. Mrs. Anderson joined them at the window. She added that the way people treat you when they think you are an ordinary customer says more about their character than any speech they could give. Malik thought back to Carlton's cold tone earlier and understood what she meant. The family spent a few quiet minutes exploring the suite. Malik claimed the armchair by the window as his own spot. Mrs. Anderson examined the small details in the room, noticing the quality of the linens, the arrangement of the furniture, and the placement of welcome notes. Mr. Anderson opened a notebook and began jotting down thoughts about the check-in process and the first impressions given by the staff. Downstairs in the lobby, Carlton was still processing the revelation he had just heard. The knowledge that the family he had turned away now owned the hotel sat heavily in his mind. His earlier confidence had given way to unease. He replayed his words and actions, realizing how different his approach had been compared to the way he had greeted other guests. It was not long before the manager arrived at the suite, knocking lightly before stepping inside. He greeted the Andersons warmly, congratulating them on their purchase and apologizing for any inconvenience during their arrival. His tone was genuine, and his handshake was firm. Mr. Anderson welcomed him in, offering a seat. The conversation turned to the future of the hotel. The Andersons shared their vision: better training for staff, a stronger focus on genuine hospitality, and an environment where every guest felt truly welcome. The manager listened closely, nodding at each point. Malik sat quietly in the corner, watching the discussion and realizing that his parents were not just hotel owners now, they were leaders who could shape the entire atmosphere of the place. Meanwhile, Carlton was asked to join the meeting. He entered the suite with careful steps, his posture respectful. His usual polished smile was replaced by a more serious expression. He greeted the Andersons formally and waited for them to speak. Mr. Anderson did not raise his voice or speak harshly. Instead, he addressed the situation with calm clarity. He explained how their check-in experience had felt different from that of other guests and how those differences could affect the hotel's reputation. Mrs. Anderson added that true hospitality came from treating every guest as if they mattered, no matter who they were or what they looked like. Carlton listened. His eyes lowered slightly. He admitted that he could have handled the situation better. His voice was quieter now, carrying a tone of regret. The Andersons did not press the moment to embarrass him. Instead, they spoke about moving forward, about learning from mistakes, and becoming part of a team that represented the values the hotel would stand for. By the end of the conversation, Carlton's shoulders had relaxed a little. He thanked them for the opportunity to improve and assured them he would take the feedback seriously. The Andersons believed in giving people a chance to grow, and this moment, they hoped, would be the start of a positive change. After the meeting ended, the family took a walk through the hotel with the manager. They visited the lounge, the restaurant, and several guest rooms. Malik enjoyed seeing the different spaces, from cozy single rooms to grand suites. Mrs. Anderson took notes on the decor, while Mr. Anderson asked the staff questions about their work and ideas for improvements. When they returned to their suite in the evening, the sky outside the windows was painted in shades of orange and purple. Malik sat by the window again, looking down at the city lights beginning to sparkle. He felt proud of his parents, not just for owning the hotel, but for the way they had handled everything with patience and grace. Mrs. Anderson brought a tray of tea to the table, and the family sat together, talking about the day. They spoke about the changes they wanted to make, the kind of service they hoped to inspire, and the way they wanted guests to feel when they walked through the doors of the Blue Horizon. In the quiet that followed, Malik realized that the most important shift had not been in ownership papers or management roles. The true change was in the understanding that respect and kindness could transform a place more deeply than any decoration or luxury could. And that, he thought, was a kind of power worth having. The next morning, the Blue Horizon Hotel felt different. The sunlight poured through the large glass doors, casting warm reflections on the marble floor. Guests walked through the lobby as usual, but there was a subtle tension in the air, as if the hotel itself sensed the change about to unfold. Mrs. Anderson stood near the reception desk, her posture calm but firm. Today, she had decided to meet the staff personally. She wanted to speak to everyone about the importance of hospitality, kindness, and fairness. Staff members passed by her, curious about why the owners of the hotel were present on the floor so early. Carlton, standing behind the front desk, looked at her nervously. Mrs. Anderson smiled at him. Her eyes were gentle but carried authority. "Good morning, Carlton," she said. "I would like to speak to all the staff today. It will not take long, but it is important." Carlton nodded and, with a quiet tone, began inviting the employees to gather in the lounge. Within a few minutes, the lounge filled with the hotel staff. Housekeepers, bellhops, receptionists, and restaurant staff all took seats, exchanging curious glances. Malik and his father stood slightly behind Mrs. Anderson, allowing her to lead the conversation. The suite they had stayed in yesterday now felt like a distant memory as the focus shifted to the lives and work of the people who made the hotel run. Mrs. Anderson began speaking softly, her words clear and deliberate. She told the staff that the Blue Horizon was more than a building or a business. It was a place where people came seeking comfort, warmth, and respect. She explained that every guest deserved to be treated with kindness and fairness, regardless of who they were. She paused, letting the words settle into the room. A few staff members exchanged uneasy glances. Carlton's gaze fell to the floor, remembering his behavior toward the family the day before. Mrs. Anderson continued, speaking about how small actions like greeting a guest sincerely or listening patiently could change someone's experience completely. She shared the story of how they had been treated differently and how understanding, patience, and respect had made the day better for everyone. Mr. Anderson added his thoughts. He spoke about leadership and responsibility. He told the staff that owning the hotel was not just about making profits, but about creating a culture where employees felt proud of their work and guests felt valued. He emphasized that every person's contribution mattered, from the bellhop carrying luggage to the housekeeper arranging towels. Malik listened closely, watching how the staff reacted. Some faces showed surprise, while others reflected guilt or shame. Yet there were also faces that began to soften, showing curiosity and hope. It was as if Mrs. Anderson's words were gently lifting a weight off their shoulders. After speaking for some time, Mrs. Anderson invited the staff to share their thoughts. A few employees hesitated, but then one housekeeper, a kind woman named Rosa, spoke up. She admitted that sometimes they followed routines without thinking about the human side of their work. She confessed that she wanted to make every guest feel welcome, but did not always know how. Mrs. Anderson nodded, encouraging her honesty and assuring her that awareness was the first step toward improvement. Another staff member, a young bellhop named Jason, admitted that he had noticed how differently the Andersons were treated. He said he felt uncomfortable, but did not know how to correct the situation at the time. Mrs. Anderson praised his honesty and explained that acknowledging mistakes and learning from them was part of growth, both for individuals and for the hotel. Carlton remained quiet for a moment before finally speaking. He admitted that he had judged the family unfairly and treated them in a way that did not represent the values of the Blue Horizon. His voice was steady but humble. Mrs. Anderson acknowledged his confession and thanked him for being honest. She reminded everyone that true change comes from taking responsibility for actions and choosing to act differently moving forward. The room became filled with a quiet energy. Staff members began discussing ideas among themselves, ways to improve, guest interactions, ways to notice small details, and ways to make every visitor feel welcome. Malik noticed the shift and felt proud of how his parents handled the situation. They had not scolded anyone harshly. Instead, they had guided, inspired, and encouraged the staff to do better. After the meeting, Mrs. Anderson walked through the lobby with her family. She spoke with staff individually, offering encouragement and advice. She smiled at Carlton, who now appeared calmer and more attentive. He listened carefully, nodding as she spoke about kindness and fairness in every interaction. Guests entering the hotel began to notice subtle differences. Staff greeted them with a warmer tone, smiles were more sincere, and small gestures like holding doors or assisting with luggage became more thoughtful. The atmosphere, which had once been routine and professional, began to feel alive and welcoming. Malik watched as his parents spoke with guests and staff alike. He realized that leadership was not about rules or power alone, but about setting an example. He saw how a calm voice, a sincere smile, and a thoughtful action could inspire others to be better. It was a lesson he would remember for the rest of his life. As the day progressed, the hotel continued its usual rhythm, but the change in energy was noticeable. Guests lingered a little longer in the lobby, staff moved with purpose, and the hotel felt more like a home than a building. The Andersons spent the day observing, noting small details, and encouraging positive behaviors. By evening, the lounge was quiet again. Malik sat on a sofa with a book, but his thoughts were not on reading. He thought about the transformations he had witnessed, the courage it took to admit mistakes, and the beauty of choosing kindness. His father joined him, placing a hand on his shoulder and saying that today was just the beginning. True change required consistency and patience. Mrs. Anderson stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. She felt satisfaction in the first steps taken. The hotel would not transform overnight, but the seed had been planted. Hearts and minds had begun to change, and the atmosphere reflected that growth. She smiled quietly, knowing that their approach, gentle, patient, and encouraging, would continue to inspire those who worked there. As night fell, the Blue Horizon Hotel rested under a sky painted with stars. Inside, the family gathered in their suite once more. They spoke about the day, the staff, and the importance of treating every guest with dignity. Malik felt a sense of pride and hope. He understood that owning a hotel was about much more than keys, rooms, or money. It was about people, relationships, and the power of kindness. In that moment, the hotel felt different, not because of ownership or luxury, but because of hearts and minds shifting toward understanding, respect, and compassion. And for the first time, Malik truly believed that even small acts could change the world in meaningful ways. The morning sun rose slowly over the city, casting golden light across the Blue Horizon Hotel. The lobby, once familiar to Malik, now seemed alive with possibility. Every corner reflected the subtle changes his family had begun to make. Staff moved with purpose, smiles were genuine, and the air carried an unusual warmth. It was not just a hotel anymore. It was a place where respect, care, and understanding guided every action. Malik walked through the lobby with his mother. Mrs. Anderson greeted every employee by name, stopping to share encouraging words. She noticed the pride in their expressions, the renewed sense of responsibility, and the joy in their work. Malik felt a swell of pride. He understood that change was hard, but it was possible when people believed in fairness and kindness. The staff gathered again, this time in the main lounge, for a short meeting before the day began. Mr. Anderson addressed them, his voice calm but firm. He reminded everyone that the hotel's success depended on the way guests were treated. He praised their efforts over the past 2 days and encouraged them to continue improving, emphasizing that small, consistent acts of care could create an unforgettable experience for visitors. Carlton stood among the staff, his posture more relaxed than before. He had embraced the lesson of humility and respect, understanding the importance of treating every guest fairly. The hesitation that had clouded his face 2 days ago had disappeared. He spoke to the other employees about what he had learned, acknowledging his mistakes and showing that growth was possible. His colleagues listened closely, absorbing the lesson with renewed focus. Malik's parents decided to spend the morning walking through the hotel, observing interactions and giving guidance where needed. They visited the restaurant, where servers were attentive without being intrusive, and the kitchen, where chefs were organizing their stations with care and teamwork. Every room, every corner of the hotel seemed touched by the promise of a new beginning. Later in the afternoon, a group of guests arrived at the hotel. Among them was a family with young children, full of energy and curiosity. Malik watched as the staff welcomed them warmly, offering assistance with luggage and explaining the facilities with patience. He noticed how different the scene felt, compared to 2 days ago when tension and cold formality had dominated the lobby. Mrs. Anderson approached the family, smiling genuinely. She introduced herself and her husband, offering a brief welcome and asking if there was anything they needed to feel comfortable. The guests responded with gratitude, clearly appreciating the personal attention. Malik observed the interaction and realized that hospitality was not just about providing comfort, it was about making people feel valued and understood. As the day progressed, the hotel seemed to hum with life. Guests enjoyed their stay more fully, staff took pride in their work, and Malik felt a deep sense of connection to the place his family now owned. He saw how small gestures, like offering a glass of water or a simple greeting, could transform someone's experience entirely. In the evening, the Anderson family gathered in the top-floor suite, the same one they had first stayed in when they arrived. The sunlight had softened into the warm glow of sunset, painting the city skyline in shades of pink and gold. Malik sat by the window, reflecting on the events of the past days. He thought about the initial tension in the lobby, Carlton's cold attitude, and the staff's uncertainty. Now the hotel felt completely different, alive with hope and genuine care. Mrs. Anderson joined Malik, placing a hand on his shoulder. She spoke softly, explaining that true leadership was about setting an example. She reminded him that every person, no matter their role, could contribute to creating a positive and respectful environment. Malik listened carefully, realizing that the lessons of hospitality, empathy, and fairness extended far beyond the walls of the hotel. Mr. Anderson entered the room carrying a small notebook. He shared his observations from the day, noting improvements in staff behavior, guest satisfaction, and overall atmosphere. He emphasized that while progress had been made, the work of maintaining kindness and respect was ongoing. Malik nodded, understanding that a new beginning required consistent effort and attention. Later that evening, the family decided to host a small gathering for the hotel staff in the lounge. They prepared a simple arrangement of refreshments and invited everyone to join. The staff gathered, their faces bright and eager. There was a sense of camaraderie and mutual respect in the room. Conversations flowed easily, laughter echoed softly, and a sense of shared purpose filled the air. Mrs. Anderson addressed the group once more. She spoke about the importance of gratitude, patience, and listening. She reminded the staff that every interaction mattered and that kindness had the power to leave lasting impressions. She emphasized that the hotel was a reflection of their collective efforts, and that together they could create an environment that guests would remember fondly. Carlton, standing nearby, nodded in agreement. He shared his own experience, admitting that he had learned a valuable lesson about fairness and humility. His sincerity resonated with the staff, reinforcing the idea that anyone could grow and improve when given the opportunity. As the evening drew to a close, the Anderson family took a quiet walk through the now peaceful hotel. Malik felt a sense of fulfillment as he observed staff members interacting naturally and warmly with guests. The change that had begun with a simple conversation had spread through the entire hotel. Respect, kindness, and fairness were no longer abstract ideas. They were actions visible in every smile, every gesture, and every interaction. Returning to their suite, Malik reflected on the journey they had undertaken. From the initial confrontation in the lobby to the quiet transformations that followed, the past days had been filled with lessons about empathy, patience, and courage. He realized that the greatest power did not lie in ownership or authority, but in the ability to inspire others to act with integrity and kindness. Mrs. Anderson prepared tea, and the family sat together by the window, gazing at the city lights. The hotel, once a place of uncertainty and tension, now represented hope, growth, and the promise of a brighter future. Malik understood that this was only the beginning. Every day would bring new opportunities to make a positive impact, to foster understanding, and to strengthen the bonds between people. As night settled over the city, the Blue Horizon Hotel stood tall and welcoming. It was no longer just a building with rooms and corridors. It was a place shaped by hearts and minds committed to kindness, fairness, and respect. Malik felt proud, knowing that the family had not only transformed a hotel, but had also created a legacy of compassion and integrity that would continue to touch lives for years to come. In that quiet, golden moment, Malik understood the true meaning of ownership. It was not about power or control. It was about responsibility, empathy, and the courage to make a difference. And with that understanding, he smiled, knowing that the Blue Horizon Hotel would shine not just for its guests, but for the people who worked there and the values they upheld.